This week, learn how to create a man-in-the-mill proxy with a Raspberry Pi, some custom scripts that give you complete control and visibility into your lab network. Then in the security news, hacking smart barbecue probes. China uses us as a proxy. LOLPROX and living off the hypervisor. Are we overreacting to react for shell? Prolific spyware vendors, EDR evaluations, and tinfoil hats compiling to bash how e-waste became a conference badge, overflows via underflows, and reporting to CERT. Users are using AI to complete mandatory infosec training in the category of, why didn't I think of that? AI in your IDE is not a good idea. Cybercrime is on the rise, and it's the children. AI can replace humans in power plants, or can it? Will AI prompt injection ever go away? And to use a VPN or not to use a VPN, that is the question. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software, deployment, and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deepfake voices joining your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. Even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. Coming to you from the Hackers Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 904, being recorded on Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Mr. Josh Morpett. Josh, welcome.
As always, I love being here, brother.
We love having you. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Glad to see you.
And Tyler Robinson is here with us. Tyler, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be here, buddy.
Special guest co-host, no stranger to the show, though, Mr. Josh Bressers is here with us. Josh, welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, man. Thank you.
It's good to have you, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super excited about this technical segment. I got to actually move some stuff around so I can use another keyboard to show everyone. But we're going to jump right into it, which is exciting. So I drew some inspiration from this from some other projects. It's actually pretty funny. Matt Brown. I don't know if you guys ever watch Matt Brown's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Amazing hardware hacker, right?
Yeah.
He's actually coming on my Below the Surface show tomorrow to talk about how we use Claude to do firmware reverse engineering, which is going to be exciting because I was like, hey, well, you're using Claude and I'm using Claude. We should hang out. And to support my security research that I do for my day job, I had this thing where I needed to be, I guess the new term is person in the middle, right? I needed to be able to control and intercept all of the traffic from certain devices, especially IoT devices, because they tend to do weird stuff, like reach out to servers in China and do all kinds of weird stuff. And I needed a way to be able to inspect all of the traffic, but also attack those devices with complete control over the network. So I need to control DNS. I need to control its IP address. I need to control all its traffic. If it sends traffic to a specific port, I want to be able to do stuff with that, like send it to man-in-the-middle proxy or not SSL strip, SSL split. SSL strip is a tool, but SSL split is the newer tool that does that. And I needed to be able to spoof DNS, right? I want to be able to say, well, you're going to this server. I want you, instead of going to that server, go to a server that I control. All of this to support security research efforts. And me being lazy, I'm like, I just want this to happen. Like I want to run a script and I want everything to be all set up. I don't want to, manually start messing around with configuring the DNS server every single time. And doing all that stuff. So, I mean, this is useful for a whole host of security research. It allows you to create. So basically what I do is I take a Raspberry Pi. I have a Raspberry Pi 5. It's running Kali Linux. And I use its internal Ethernet port and its internal Wi-Fi port. I put them on the same bridge network. And that's the internal network for my IoT devices and anything that I'm researching. So they can connect via Wi-Fi or they connect via Ethernet. And they're on this now private LAN. That LAN flows through my Raspberry Pi, and I have a USB to Ethernet adapter on it, and that's my WAN port, which lives on my LAN. So that's the basic setup for it. And so I created these elaborate scripts to support that. And so I did it in a configuration file kind of format. I broke out a configuration file. So that, I mean, basically anyone can use this on any Linux device, right? Provided you've got all the prerequisites. The networking conceivably should work on most Linux distributions. You'll see in the script, it actually disables all of the system D networking and goes back to basically old school networking. So like I rip out all the fancy plumbing that Linux put in place, and I'm just able to use like ifconfig to rebuild the network. So you define your devices in here. There's 4, so you get your bridge device, your WAN device, your LAN device, and your Wi-Fi device. So basically your LAN and your Wi-Fi will be attached to the bridge. Then you give it your Wi-Fi access point, SSID, and password. So you create a Wi-Fi network. You define all of your networking for your LAN and your WAN. You can give it a default proxy mode. So like you can't actually run man-in-the-middle proxy and SSL strip at the same time. I guess you can't, because you have to redirect port 443. I'll show you the IP tables rule that does that. So like basically anything coming in port 443, you use IP tables and you send it to port 8081 where man-in-the-middle proxy is listening, or SSL strip, depending on which one you want to configure. Man-in-the-middle proxy is pretty good. It has like a web interface, so you got to tell it where you want it to listen. And it'll listen on that, and you can connect to it and mess with the SSL connections. SSL split, you just define the log directory. And then I also can run TCP dump automatically. So when I start this up, I can say, you know what, just capture all of the packets, and I can do that automatically. So it dumps everything on the bridge interface and saves all of the captures for me. So I did a nice configuration file. And then if we look at the actual script, and we'll talk about it in the next segment too, there's like this general rule of thumb where if it's over 50 lines in its bash, you should probably use a real language. This bash script is 660 lines. So I broke that rule. It does have to be run as root. I'm pushing keys on my other keyboard there. It does have to be run as root. It loads the configuration file. And then you have some options. So I did it so you could do like basically bring it up, bring it down. And so the down commands like basically reverse everything inside of the networking, which was pretty wild. Like to actually like configure the networking this way. Okay, then tear it all down and go back to normal, which is pretty cool. And it has a reload option as well.
So you're storing the default config, or you're storing the config before, and then you rip it down to put the config back, or?
I think I just tear all the interfaces down.
Okay.
Yeah. So you basically have no networking. Although I do have options. My -K option is to keep my WAN port. So when it configures the WAN port, it won't mess with that when you reload it or bring it down. So if I'm SSH'd into the device via the WAN port, it won't kill that interface. Before I had that option, I would like test it and I would cut off the branch I was standing on every time, which was super annoying. So I'm like, no, I need an option to like just leave the WAN alone. Like once you set it up once, leave it. It's fine. And then so the mode, so you tell it like, do you want to run man in the middle proxy? Do you want to run SSL split, or do you want to run none of them and just set up a basically a bridge and be able to capture packets? So that's all in there, which saved me a ton of time at the end of the day, which is really, really super nice. So it's got a bunch of error checking in here. It checks to see if the WAN is configured. We look for dependencies. Running on a Kali Linux is pretty nice because all of the tools are basically available in Kali Linux. So once one command installs all of the dependencies and you're off to the races, which is nice. And then there's a bunch of functions for doing a whole bunch of stuff. It automatically configures a SSL certificate for, what is that for? For SSL split, right? Because you need some type of SSL certificate to present to the host. And this is an invalid certificate, right? It's not an actual signed by an actual CA, so it should fail. But I did this for a reason, because many IoT devices will use SSL to do things like update firmware or update software, but they won't actually check the validity of the SSL cert. So by having this in here, I can automatically test like, hey, if I spoof or if I'm doing the interception when it goes out to reach for firmware, it should kick back an error and say, hey, I can't update because the SSL is broken. But some devices won't, which is awesome. So by nature, like me just spinning this up could be a finding, a vulnerability finding. And so I regenerate those every time. I suppose I could have an option that you can specify your own. Probably need to put that in there. And then it just starts TCP dump, very basic, just packet capture to give me some PCAP files. That's stopping the capture. And so these are all the services. So the first time it runs, it's going to kill everything so it can restart it, right? So we need WPA supplicant to create the Wi-Fi network. We need DNS mask for DNS and DHCP. Host APD for the Wi-Fi as well. Man-in-the-middle web, which is the management interface for man-in-the-middle proxy, and SSL split. And this is the script to kill the network manager, systemd network, systemd resolve D, right? So basically none of your networking or DNS resolution is handled by systemd. And look, we're all learning to love systemd. It's fine. But in this case, I just wanted to do traditional networking because I wanted control over it. So I'm not using systemd for that. So it kills all that stuff.
You're using get off my lawn networking. Got it. Okay.
Yes, pretty much. Resolve.conf, right? We're using that for the DNS, and because it's just easier to configure. It's just easy to write the name server to a file and call it a day. And that's my name server. We all like yearn for the days when it was that easy. So that's that. Then it brings everything back, all the interfaces up based on the configuration file and the bridge. Then we've got some reload stuff, and it builds the configuration files for both DNS mask and host APD on the fly using our configuration options, which is nice. And you can customize that, right? Like you can put more stuff in here. I think I added like log queries in log DHCP. So I had some logging in there so I could see all the DNS queries happening in a log file. Set up the WPA networking. Set up my network interfaces. Do all the fancy networking stuff. Which is not that interesting. But the forwarding rules are important, right? So make sure you enable IP forwarding, and then make sure your IP tables rules are configured correctly for it to act as basically a gateway. And then you have your custom proxy mode, right? So here are the ones where it's taking port 443 and redirecting it to your man-in-the-middle proxy port, right? So you're transparently proxying your SSL traffic. Now, conceivably, we could write a lot more rules to forward any traffic that we like that's coming from the LAN network and going out, which is awesome. Then it starts up the services. It's got a really neat thing when it starts them up and tells you if it died and puts a little, the X there and stuff like that. I had an issue with my config and something was failing to start, and it does indicate that, which is nice. And then it starts the proxy servers, right? This was like some research to figure out how do I properly start the man in the middle thing, send it to a log, got all that squared away. And then, if it's SSL split, does the same thing for SSL split, which is nice. All the options right here, listens on the port. And then do more TCP dump stuff. It gives you a nice little summary of what's running, what's not running, what's been enabled, what's not enabled. Some good feedback there. And then this is the cleanup script, right? So it kills all the services, and it should also remove all the interfaces as well. So there is another little script in here too that is really awesome. So does anyone want to guess if I used an AI agent to create this or not?
Claude.
I mean, just knowing that
The answer
it's
is
Claude,
yes.
right? Yeah. Claude did most of the heavy lifting for this.
I mean, that's still a 600 line bash file, so for that to actually work
Right.
from Claude, you probably had to manipulate a bit.
I had to prompt it very specifically. It did create a syntax error with, I believe it was SSL split. It misinterpreted the documentation and what the options did, so I had to manually research it and be like, no, like you really want this option in this parameter and this option in this parameter. And it was like, oh, okay, I got it now. I had to teach Claude how to do that. But other than that, I mean, I went through every single line in all these scripts, and I'm like, that looks pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't be as verbose and put as much error checking as Claude did, which is kind of nice because, Claude's not really that lazy. I'm lazy. So we work well together. But it wrote this really cool DNS spoof, right? Since we control DNS, we're the recursive resolving server. So what we want to be able to do is spoof DNS names and redirect them back to ourselves so we can intercept traffic. Now, specifically, right, my primary use case for this is I want to intercept firmware updates and I want to send back my firmware, hoping that there's no signature check or other protections on some of these devices. Actually, I have that in my stories too, how it's becoming very commonplace for devices to update either not over SSL and also not check the signature of any firmware or software when they're updating. So by gaining control of DNS, this was Claude's idea, by the way. I don't know. It dreamed this up on its own. It's like, oh, I'll just create you a separate shell script where you can add, remove, and list host name to IP address pairs. I'm like, that's actually pretty nice. I'm like, I like that. I'm like, go with that. So basically, you can use the add command, right? So you run DNS spoof, add your domain name, and then the IP address, and it adds it into the configuration file. And then it reloads, sends the HUP signal to DNS mask and reloads it, and that loads your DNS entries in there.
Do you have
So I have,
do you have that sinkholing, or do you have that going to, say, a honeypot or any kind of deception technology that captures what's
I'm just
happening?
doing so I'm just spoofing the DNS name to the IP address of my Raspberry Pi's LAN port. So basically, if it resolves that, whatever entries I put in here, right, like firmware download.site will go to my Kali Linux box. And then I have to set something up. So like you have Claude write you a Python script that catches those requests like a Python web server is how I solve that problem, which I can't share with you yet until disclosure.
The blog
happens.
article comes out when?
Right. 90-day standard disclosure policy. So this did result in findings, at least one finding. So this is the configuration that it creates, right? So you get your domain name and then IP address in here. And then to answer your question, Tyler, right? You have to set something up to do that. I do want to, the next piece I want to do is have it intercept all, like regardless of where DNS is pointing. Because in this scenario, I'm relying on the fact that whatever device I put behind it has honored my DHCP options and set the DNS server to 192.168.200.1, which is my Kali Linux Raspberry Pi. But I even think Claude said this, or something I read said some, especially IoT devices, will ignore the DNS option. I think it's option 6, right? Is for the DNS server. It will ignore that and use its own hard-coded DNS. And I believe that was disclosed with Nano KVM, uses like a Chinese DNS server. So I need to
Yep.
add some functionality
Sinkhole would
into
fix
this
that.
script. Yeah, I need to sinkhole it. Right. And I was just in the process of researching the best way to do that. And then the LLMs get like really mad when I ask it those kind of questions. It's like, you look like you're doing evil. Like, no, I'm not. Teaching a class, go away. Like Sam said, teaching a class, go away. So that's basically it. It was a fun project. And again, I still want to go back and add more functionality to this. I want to make it so that it's really super easy for me to grab the packet captures. Like, I'm almost thinking of setting up like a SSH, maybe using SSH as like a file share, right? And so I can mount the drive over SSH rather than using Samba, because Samba gives me the heebie-jeebies. But like maybe over SSH, mount the folder that has the captures, so I can just pull those locally and analyze them with Wireshark. I want to do the DNS sinkholing feature as well, and I'm like, sure, other stuff will crop up as I put devices behind it.
Honeypot,
like,
man.
oh, yeah,
Deception,
I need to be running this
honeypot.
tool. Yep, we can do honeypot stuff as well.
You can do
Yeah,
deception.
I think
you can do honeypot.
Deception.pro has the ability to look for what it's looking for, and you can real time or on the fly build stuff.
I mean, could I put burps proxy in there? I could probably put like a burp proxy in there.
You could
This
put a
is looking like-
collaborator
where can I find
proxy
this?
address.
So I haven't gotten permission to release the code yet
Okay.
because I wrote it for my day
Ouch,
job.
that's harsh.
Except we can just OCR the screen grab. You just go through.
You could. Yeah. I mean, you could also, I pretty much told you how you can prompt Claude to create it. So, I mean, you could definitely go recreate it, or like, I haven't even asked for permission to open source it. So I'm hoping that they're gonna be like, yeah, that's fine. And then I'll make it open source for everyone to download. So,
but you get that open source tooling. You horrible person, you.
But you get the basics, right? You got the hardware. I'm using a Raspberry Pi 5 with an NVMe M.2 hat on it, which I find to be really performant. And I've got it connected to the CrowView Note as my monitor, mouse, and keyboard. So when I do screw up the networking and I need to log into it to fix something, I can do that. So that's also kind of a nice thing to keep on your Raspberry Pi, so you can access it physically when you're doing this. But the Pi 5 with the M.2, I think I bought what's the highest RAM on a Pi 5? Is it 16 gig?
No, I think it's 8.
Is it 8?
They announced a 16, I believe, but
did
they
they?
probably have an 8.
Yeah, so it's probably an 8. Runs Kali fine, Kali updates, and it handles all of this stuff like just fine. And I'm like, this is a perfect usage for my Raspberry Pi. I'm like, this is perfect. So I'm really digging it. I mean, I think I have one of those like Kotom fanless mini PCs with 4 Ethernet ports on it. I'm like, I probably should put it on that and reclaim my Raspberry Pi. It's kind of because in some ways it's a waste of a Raspberry Pi, right? I'm not really using the GPIO ports, on the Raspberry Pi. But yeah, you can pretty much. I think it'll run on most. What do you think, Josh? Like, run on most Linux distros, right?
Yeah, I bet you could run this on almost any hardware as well. I mean, the things you've described are not like super resource intense. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if you could run this on a Pi 4 or even a Pi 3. It sounds like a challenge, Paul. Like, what is the crappiest
what's the
hardware
that you can run it on? Yeah, you've got old hardware sitting around. This is a great.
If you want, I've got a Pi 1 sitting around somewhere. I'll go see if I can find it.
Yeah, because there's so many devices I tested, and I'm like, man, I don't want these on my network. I want to control everything that this, and see everything this device does. And I finally got around. But huge shout out to Matt Brown. He recreated some of the original scripts that I was using, and I'm like, I got really infatuated with Claude Code, and I was like, oh, I can use that to like really ramp this up and add lots of features really fast. And that's how I created it. I did my trick with Claude Code. I'm like, I don't have any code yet, but I'm like, let me git clone all the repositories that are close to what I want, then fire up Claude Code, let it read through all of that stuff, and then go, I want to do what they do, but I want to do it this way. And it seems if you have a starting point like that, Claude just loves that. It like, because it basically builds context for Claude organically just by git cloning stuff. So did you listen to the segment, Josh, where I did my vulnerability research tool?
That does not ring a bell.
Thing.
I'm like literally months behind on my podcasts. So
yeah, no worries.
I suspect I missed it.
I use Claude to basically create a web interface with Python Flask that pulls down all of the vulnerability databases and enrichment databases and lets me search them.
Oh, nice.
And it did amazing doing it. That's another one where I'm got to get my day job to greenlight the open sourcing of it. So now that I've talked about it publicly, like it kind of forces them to do that. They might be mad at me for saying that on the air, but they'll get over it.
Yes.
But great use case for, AI coding tools. Although the vulnerability web interface was a lot. I had to upgrade to the $200 a month one. Constantly running out of tokens. This one you could do with a lot less tokens because it's just a couple of shell scripts.
I mean, local AI and the 5090. Don't you have all those?
I do have 5090.
Local AI.
That's it. So great way to do security research, like saving me now moving forward so much time, because I was like doing some of that stuff manually and like piecemeal. Now it's just set up, and I've got now a dedicated network to do that, dedicated Wi-Fi network as well, that I can just attach basically vulnerable stuff or stuff that I'm researching, and be able to control and see everything that it does.
I mean, be a cool project, honestly. I was going to say, just to have a place to upload packets and stuff, like from these vulnerabilities. You can have like a vulnerable device packet repo where you can go feed in a bunch of PCAPs, a bunch of the stuff you're capturing, have other people analyze it, look for stuff you're missing. Like, this seems like a little bit bigger project than what you started with.
I did have Claude look at one PCAP, and it did just okay. I'm like, yeah, I went through the PCAP, but then I was curious. I'm like, what if I feed this a Claude and have it like go like tell me what it's doing, like what's going on here? And it did have some pretty good answers, which is interesting.
So
Security Onion on top of that, maybe?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Because you want to be able to see what is there, what it's doing, and also what it sees.
Yeah, Security Onion would be awesome because then you basically visualize all the network traffic.
And that's okay.
If I got a switch with a span port, I could pop a Security Onion on that network and it'd be off to the races.
Actually, you should do that as a second Raspberry Pi.
Yeah,
because
I do it on separate host.
But if you did that, then you're talking about like a red and a blue Raspberry Pi. That'd be kind of a cool pair.
Yeah, and it would be cool to have monitoring, because when I was doing the Android TV box research, the Android apps that people had analyzed before I looked at one of the devices, they were like, this app is evil. And when I looked at it, I'm like, that app's not evil now. It's, I think, the same app, but it's like through updates, it became less evil. But this other app became more evil. And they connect to like different domains and stuff. So you need to do some kind of like continuous monitoring to go like, okay, where is the evil now, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I think even a step further than that, you almost want a dedicated outbound like Tor exit node or something that's not hitting your WAN clear text, so your ISP doesn't block you if you start feeding malware somewhere. But providing internet to stuff also is nice to get information back or see things. Obviously, you don't want that directly on your WAN, but a dedicated
I was almost
kill switch VPN maybe.
I was like, could I do this at layer 2? Could it be
Yeah.
completely transparent and do it at layer 2, but still protect my internal network? My brain seems to think that there's a way to do that.
You can do that. We've done that before with
Yeah, right?
when we did the Cisco ICE stuff at layer 2. That was
Right.
what you'd want.
Right.
But I don't know.
You could do a layer 2, but it gets I don't do
This is why I have a second port on my DOCSIS modem. My DOCSIS modem has a separate WAN, secondary WAN port, and bad stuff sits over there just so that it doesn't traverse anything.
Yeah, I really need to get my WAN port on a dedicated VLAN that's completely separate from everything else. That's the next step.
This is almost like a hardware capture the flag in a box. A red box, a blue box, a gold box for the internet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Some monitoring. Yeah.
Some monitoring. Put an onion-shaped box. I don't know, whatever. But
Bressers, you were saying you've wanted this for a long time too. I was in the same boat.
I have tried to do this more than once, Paul, and I usually just get lazy and give up. Because there have been many, many times I'm like, what is this thing doing, right? Where I bought some crazy device for $5 and goodness knows what's happening.
Right.
And every time I go down this path, I spend a couple hours and I'm like, oh, whatever, I don't care. I'll put it on the guest Wi-Fi and then we're done.
That was me.
Yeah.
Yep. That was me.
So this is awesome. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. I hope I can release it, but again, it's not a terribly complex. In the end, I was like, that wasn't too bad. I don't know why I was stressing about that. I put it off because I was like, this is going to be so much work. But I was like, actually, it didn't take me that long.
We'll just feed the transcript of this episode into Claude Code.
And it will
you're horrible.
Actually, it probably would. To be quite honest, Josh, I think it would.
I like how you think.
Pretty close, I bet.
Well, I've been doing something very much like this for years to analyze mobile apps by just using internet connection sharing and PF and burp to make a shared Wi-Fi, but it doesn't have the DNS part.
Yeah, the DNS part was key.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's take a break and we'll come back and talk about the security news for this week. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. ThreatLocker's zero trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. Welcome back, everyone, to the security news. Very excited. I heard there was a React vulnerability.
Teensy little one.
You couldn't not hear. But people were touting this as like the next Log4j. Like, oh, this is the new Log4j. But like when I looked into it, I was like, yeah, but you need like a really specific set of libraries and functionality in order to be vulnerable. I'm not saying people don't have that, because obviously people do. And then I ran it through my own vulnerability analysis tool, which I presented a couple of weeks ago. And the entry it came back with discovered so many exploits, right? Because I have code in there that actually uses the GitHub API to find any exploits in GitHub for the CVE number. It found 205 repositories that had that CVE number in it. Now, not all of those were exploits. Some of them were just testing tools or whatever, which, I mean, could also be equivalent of an exploit. But it found 205. It found so many references that like it messed up my formatting. Like I have a bug it found a bug in my code that it had because it had so many exploits. I don't remember what the CVE number was. I don't know. Josh, you're probably very close, given your day job, very close to this React vulnerability.
Yeah. So I don't know the CVE off the top of my head. I'm bad at remembering CVE IDs. But so this one is it's pretty gnarly. And so, yeah, like for anyone who doesn't know, my day job, I work at a company called Anchor. We do like SBOM scanning, vulnerability scanning, things like that. And so obviously vulnerability scanning is right where this lands.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned React has a gnarly setup. And there's like these 3 React packages that are not widely used. And in fact, generally aren't going to be used. And just the way React is often used is we use React to like pre-render a bunch of content and you kind of throw that into your front end. Yep. However, there's another tool called next.js, and next.js is vulnerable in its default state, and it uses like React inside of it as part of how it works. And so the next.js is actually what makes it dangerous. And last time I looked at Shodan, there were like 780,000 next.js things it saw on the internet. And so basically all of those were vulnerable. Obviously, some of them probably were upgraded.
Right.
And I know some folks
React. What was the React router? Wasn't there a React router component? Right. Because that's like your app route backend, right? Like similar to Flask has app routes. That's the same equivalent for React, right?
Right. And my understanding, I'm not a React developer. I'm so bad at front end. This is where we talk about Claude Code, Paul. Like Claude does a marvelous job for front end. Like I am not a front end guy. But it's these libraries that route traffic around inside of React. And it's an object deserialization flaw, right? Where it's just doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. But again, like this is not default in React, and it's not even widely used in React just because of the way React is used. But Next.js is key. And so I know some folks running honeypots on the internet, like with this, and they said they're just getting hammered with exploits from like all over the place. Right. And so basically,
the fact that my tool found 205 GitHub repositories, I'm like, this is I concluded this is highly weaponized.
Yes. And so, if you're running Next.js, a vulnerable version, 100% guarantee you're
already popped. Yeah.
Like guaranteed. Yes.
Yep. Now, Kevin Bowman had an interesting take. So this is CVE 2025-55182. And Kevin seems to think that we all overreacted, that this isn't as big of a deal. That I don't know if you guys read this article, right? But he says, emphasizes it is only reachable in relatively specific server-side configurations rather than every React front end on the internet. This piece, it says it criticizes media, vendors, and some practitioners for treating it like a universal Log4Shell 2.0 event, which leads to panic, misstatements about scope, and rush changes that break applications or generate noise instead of risk-driven response. And I apologize to Kevin, that's an AI summary of his article, but I did read his article and I thought the summary was pretty accurate. I tend to do that, right? And if I don't, I call it out. Like, oh, that is just the AI and I didn't read the article.
No, so I agree with that. And that was my feedback to internal companies as we were dealing with it. Like, because of the way that the React flight client config worked and what was required for the resolved modules, like the resolved modules piece and the permissions that has own properties permission for that, like there were so many key things that had to be in place for this to be vulnerable that it was a pretty specific configuration. Yes, it's widely used, but the configuration in which you obtain full RCE exposed to the internet was much smaller. And I think that was where the hype, absolutely RCE 10 out of 10, checked all the boxes, but it was a lot less prevalent in at least the apps that we were looking at, because it was just too specific.
Yeah,
I
looked at a couple
object return and the constructor, the way that you had to deserialize via the constructor just didn't lend itself to be a super easy POC to generate from scratch anyway. Lots of POCs out there now.
I was lazy. I already had a Claude session and there was a React app that I was analyzing, and I was like, hey, Claude, is it vulnerable to this new React4Shell thing? And Claude said no, but now hearing you guys talk, I want to go back and double check that.
If it's React, Paul, you're probably fine. If it's Next.js, you're not fine.
Gotcha.
That's the thing. That's the thing to remember too, is React probably has billions of websites using React. Like if React was vulnerable in a default configuration, then yes, this would make Log4Shell look like a joke. But because it was really only Next.js, there were less than 1 million sites. Like, granted, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
What is Next.js, like that caching server that you spoke of? Is it a replacement for React or is it a component of React?
No, it's like It includes React, and it's one of those magic runner. It runs website stuff.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to do. I don't know. There's a fancy lingo for this in the front end world. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. But it uses React to it's like a framework for React.
Yeah, it's in there. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, and what's interesting is I'm seeing React on small. The reason I've got a little more knowledge about React than I did a couple of weeks ago is because some of the IoT devices that I'm testing actually use React as their front end for management.
React's everywhere, man. Like everywhere.
Yeah, which I haven't seen a lot. Like usually it's like awful like CGI, like fast CGI or something like that. Or, Lua is pretty popular on IoT devices. And you see just like a number of really crummy web application implementations on IoT devices. But the ones that I've been looking at recently use React and actually don't have any glaring vulnerabilities. Like, yeah, there's some vulnerabilities there, like CSRF and stuff like that, but nothing glaring. And let me tell you, I hammered on one to find an auth bypass for a long time and came up empty-handed, which I'm like, okay, that's good. I mean, maybe it's good. Is it good that we're using React? But I think the problem is, the elephant in the room is when you ship that IoT device, have you looked at your supply chain of all your libraries and what happens when there's a new vulnerability that comes out? Now you're going to push firmware update.
What happens when there's an NPM package, pollution that gets compromised upstream and worms?
Right.
Not that would ever happen.
Not that
right.
would happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most wasted, amazing vulnerability I've seen, I think, this year personally. Like, these guys could have done a lot. Nation State could have like leveraged the crap out of this if they would have stayed quiet and done this right. Like, it's pretty nasty that it's fully autonomous, leverages any credentials it finds to infect the next package, makes it public, and then worms its way to the next victim, and then discloses all the credentials it finds on localhost.
It's interesting. So it's one of the things that we're observing is, and I think this is somewhat of a trend, but it's definitely certain pockets of network appliances. In the past year or so, we've seen a 100 to 300% increase in like the number of libraries and languages being used. So in other words, like a year ago, a lot of this, firmware for these appliances didn't have Python on it, but all of a sudden there's an update. Now there's like 155 Python libraries that it's being used because it needed some functionality. It decided to use Python for that. It went through the whole dependency tree. Now you've got 155 new libraries on this device. And like, so how many of these network appliances, IoT devices are sitting there with tons of supply chain vulnerabilities that are just getting worse because we're just importing more stuff to get more functionality on these devices, and we're just making the problem worse.
Paul, it's your fault.
I mean, we've been saying that for a decade, right? Like, this has been what we've been alluding to is going to be a big problem. And now you add vibe coding into that and like dependency packages. Like, we are so many layers deep that even the people that know how to check and are well versed in this, they have to build tools and rely on others to validate what SBOMs they have and how to evaluate global packages across an ecosystem. And even then, we don't have great tools to do that from an enterprise standpoint. Like, where are all your vulnerable packages across 100,000 projects, whether they're public or private? You can't do that very quickly or easily. It doesn't scale well. Unless you have a good solution.
This is what Josh does for a living, Bressers. This is what Bressers does for a living.
Bressers, go for it, brother.
This is my world right here.
I wish more people would do it, Josh, right? Like, I think about all these network appliance vendors. I'm like, I don't know what they're looking at.
So it's getting better. And here's what I will say is that historically speaking, yes, you can say doom and gloom, tire fire, and it is. I'm not going to say it's not. Society still functions, which does surprise me sometimes, but that's one of the things, right? But now, the thing I've got my eye on, and I think the thing a lot of people are watching, is the European Union has the Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA, coming out. It starts going into effect, I think, in June of 26, if I recall correctly. And it's going to take like years to roll this out. So like, this is not something that's getting fixed quickly. But they have a bunch of requirements that if you want to sell a product into the European Union, which is a massive market, right? Almost anyone making stuff is selling into the European Union. If you're going to sell into the European Union, you have to, do vulnerability scanning. You have to have SBOMs. You have to make sure your software is updated. You have to understand what your open source is. So they're kind of nudging people in this direction. Now, it is completely possible this backfires and doesn't actually work. I'm very willing to acknowledge that sometimes regulation goes the wrong way. However, I think the fact that we have large regulatory bodies paying attention to this stuff, that's what gives me hope. Because if you think about like airline safety is a good one, right? Like planes used to just fall out of the sky and crash. And now it is super rare for an airplane to have an accident. And it's because it's highly regulated and they take safety very seriously. So hopefully these device makers, I'm not saying it'll be as good as airline safety, but hopefully it kind of approaches that direction. All right,
that's the only way to get something done like that, right? Is regulatory. Like you either have to make it financial or you have to make it regulatory. Those are really the only two, would say, real good incentives that work quickly and at scale.
This is where I live. You hit people in the wallet, or you make it mandatory to do it before you can sell it.
Yeah,
and that's the only way to get them to do it.
Why don't we have an SBOM for all these, especially for devices, right? That come in a box, and you're not supposed to look in the box. I use the analogy that these appliances and IoT devices we get are like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. Like no one's allowed to look inside the briefcase.
Schrodinger's box.
But I'm like, why doesn't the box or the briefcase come with a manifest of what's inside? Because if they did, then I could tell you. I'm like, oh, by the way, that IoT device that we deployed last week runs Next.js and has the vulnerability. I can see that because it has the vulnerability. But none of these manufacturers still don't want to ship SBOMs with their stuff for all the reasons we've talked about before. So, like, where's the tipping point now?
Now, I have a question on the SBOM piece. Does that scale and work in a nestable fashion where you're relying on a project or a dependency that then has dependencies within it that then could have been vulnerable?
Wait, this is my world. Canonicalization and serialization. Can you tell me what the atomic unit of software is?
Yeah, transient dependencies have always been hard. Because how many levels deep do you go?
That's the thing. What is the atomic unit of software? What is the smallest bit that you call that's a piece of software? Because that's what you have to version control. And when you version control
instruction.
What's that?
One machine language command.
Oh, great. It's because every programmer knows what a machine language command is.
Well, especially device SBOM like yours, Josh's. Are they doing how deep do they go? Like, is this from in your world? Like, how well is this covered, and how comprehensive?
So this is where regulation comes into play, because some of the regulations say like, oh, you only need your direct dependencies to be cataloged in something like an SBOM, and so obviously someone's only going to do what the regulator says. However, the correct way to do it is to catalog everything. And it gets even crazier because you can imagine, like I have a source code repository. The things in my source code repository, I can create an SBOM of that, right? And I get maybe the things we'll say that are part of my code, like I directly have. Then when we build that software, now we have a different set of things because we might have downloaded stuff during the build. We might compile things. We might add dependencies. We might take out dependencies.
Oh my God. I see that with platform. When I build on platform IO, it pulls down so many, both Python
you run
and
NPM scripts that pull in other NPM packages.
Yep.
Right. And then you build a container with your thing, and now you have extra, right? And so you can see every step of the way, you're adding and removing software in different ways. And so fundamentally, the right way to do this is an SBOM should catalog absolutely everything in the artifact you are dealing with at that moment in time. Not first level, like every single thing in there. Like if your NPM has an OpenSSL library inside of it, that is a dependency that should be noted in the SBOM. Stuff like that. Like as deep as you can go is the only way we can do this.
Because it's all part of the attack surface. I think the goal of an SBOM is to define the attack surface for that device. I mean, it's one use case.
Yes. It's bananas though. I mean, and it's hard to do. I mean, so this is like one of the things I do every day, Tyler, is like we have like customers come to us and say, hey, you're not detecting this thing correctly or whatever. And it's like, it's bugging the product, right? And then we do our best to figure it out. But like the open source thing we have, it's this tool called Sift. Like you can just get it and run it. It's really easy to run. and it tries really hard to unwind, like it does the jars and jars and jars, like it dives into archives. Yeah. We try to find it all and we know we can't find everything, but like if we can't find something, that's a bug, and we try to fix it, because the goal is to find absolutely everything.
And what is gripe? You guys have sift and gripe. What is gripe? I don't remember now. I've run
that's
both
vulnerability scanner.
So gripe is the vulnerability scanner, and sift is the SBOM. Okay,
right. And ironically, gripe includes sift as a library to inspect the stuff.
They're great tools. I've used them. They're awesome.
You have a security rating for every version of every library, so you can say how dangerous each of them are?
We don't do that. That is a whole other conversation, Sam.
Yeah.
And there are tools, there's things like the OpenSSF is something called Scorecard that tries to do some of that stuff. And I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, because I think today, the way we are measuring everything is the drunk under the lamp. Like, we are measuring the things we can measure, which aren't necessarily the things we should measure, right?
Correct. Because just relying on version number is problematic for a whole host of reasons.
Yep.
I mean, it's great as a good first exact. Well,
even that sounds overwhelming. It must be thousands of software libraries and versions in every product.
And you can't hash it, because if someone changed one thing in it, the hash isn't going to match, so that goes out the window. And then you're left to either binary or source code analysis and figuring out the DNA of every piece of software and then comparing it. So like, if you know that this software has this DNA and it's an 85% match to this other piece of software, then that's likely the same piece of software. And if there's a vulnerability in it, that other piece of software likely has that vulnerability.
But now,
this is job security for us.
Yes, it is job security. Okay, so Paul, I want to talk about that for a second, that whole like the DNA of a binary and things like that. So there are things starting to happen in the world of like compilers and the linking and all the tool chain and things like that, where I'll use Go and Rust both do this, where like when you build a Go application now, by default, it includes a list of all of the modules it pulled in, all of its dependencies are in the binary. Rust does the same thing, which is great, because now
they're not in a separate. I thought it was in like a packages.
No, they're in the binary.
Packages.json is React, right? That's the manifest for
NPM
React.
is packages. Package.json.
Yeah, but JSON.
That's NPM.
In Go, is there? It's in the binary. It's not in it's not another.
Well,
file?
Okay, no. So a Go, like the Go project, the source code has the go.mod file, right?
Yeah,
which defines all that.
I couldn't remember the name of the file. Right.
When you build it, it includes the Go mod contents essentially inside of the binary. So now when a tool like Sift looks at it, we look at all of that metadata, and that's how we can extract what's at, which is super helpful. And I wish every binary tool, like every compiler in the world, did this, because it would be awesome.
Right. But we end up with a hodgepodge, as usual.
Yes.
As usual. Well, while we're on the programming languages, this was kind of a fun one. I found this project called Amber, and it's the programming language that you program in. And when it compiles the language, it's kind of like a TypeScript type language. But when you compile it, it creates Bash script that'll run anywhere. I'm like, that's super weird. I'm like, you're not coding in Bash, but like, the resulting code ends up in Bash, but I'm like, you wouldn't do certain things in Bash because either it would be really hard to either implement and or troubleshoot, or you'd end up introducing a vulnerability. But I'm like, now you've got an abstraction layer that's just creating Bash. Like, is it going to create good Bash?
It's a script compiling engine?
It's weird, dude.
Is this an April Fool's joke that went wrong or something? Like,
no, I don't think so. Maybe it's a ruse. Maybe they got me. I mean, the website looks legit. Yeah, a language compiled to Bash, a modern type-safe programming language that catches bugs and errors at compile time. So they basically built a TypeScript type language that makes sure that you're writing good Bash.
In 1982, there was something like this for the Commodore VIC-20. You could write Pascal, and it would compile it to BASIC, which was then interpreted.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
What?
Wait, what did you say?
And this is what got us to the moon.
Oh my God, that hurts my head.
I know, but Bash is also interpreted. So this is compiling to an interpreted language. So
I know.
It's kind
That's super
of crazy.
Weird. That's the weird part. It's not really compiling. It's transposing. Is that transcoding?
Translating. Yeah.
Translating? Yeah.
This is basically how WebAssembly works, right? Where you take a language and the output is WebAssembly, which then magically runs. We're just turning it into Bash. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
When we can jump to something completely different. Oh, let's talk about something fun, like hacking e-waste tags into conference badges. Dude, this was completely sick. I love this. I think we've known that those digital tags that we see in the stores that display the price. I forget, what is the technology they use to do that? Is it Zigbee or RFID? I forget how they actually change the data on those tags, but they basically made them as disposable. So once the battery dies on them, the stores basically throw them out, or they sell them on eBay for 70 cents a piece. And so someone bought 100 of them on eBay for 70 cents a piece and took them all apart and created the Freaknik 26 badge. It looks like they 3D printed it to look like a pager, which is awesome, by the way.
That's very cool.
They created this really cool like DB9 debugger thing. They used a DB9 cable and they replaced it with pins that go in the debugging
it almost
port.
Looks like a DB9 turned into a JTAG.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. I don't know if it was JTAG, but it was the whatever debugging interface was on the board. And then they connect I think the other side of this cable goes into an ESP32 that they programmed to specifically flash these badges. And just really cool. There's a whole conference talk on reverse engineering the e-waste. So they were able to replace the batteries in them and write new firmware to them.
That's cool.
Which is pretty awesome. I mean, talk about a cool badge and like a cool, like to save e-waste, like turning something that's just going to get thrown out into a cool project.
It's like depleted uranium ammunition.
That too. Yep.
I don't know. Those seem just a little different.
I grew up around my grandfather who grew up during the Depression, right? Like nothing ever went to waste. I think I took some of that with me to like I don't like wasting things. And so that's why I really like this kind of project, because you're using it rather than just throwing it out, you're using it. So the batteries were easily removed, which left behind just a display and a PCB. And they I would assume replace the battery. Which is awesome.
Huh. It looks kind of cool.
That is kind of freaking cool.
And you can do all kinds of stuff.
Low cost badge.
They have like whole APIs and secondary digital displays that can do stuff from the tags, proximity. The
hardware hacking stuff it's out of control. It's out of control. The number of things we have. Like I was talking, I don't know, was I talking earlier or later? I think I was talking in the future because we pre-recorded a segment, so I'm all messed up. So I guess in the listener timeline, this is like a Marvel timeline. In the listener timeline, you haven't heard me say this yet, but I have a blog post coming out that talks about really cool hacking gadgets, specifically focused on the newer models of these gadgets. So on top here, you have the M5 Stack ADV or Advanced, which is the latest version of the M5 Stack card pewter, which is awesome. It's got a slightly larger battery and some additional I/O ports. And then below that, you have the T-Embed CC1101 Plus, and the Plus adds your NRF 2401L radio to it. In addition to both having SD cards, ESP32, I think they're both ESP32 S3s. And they both support the Bruce firmware, which is very close to what the Flipper Zero can do. And these are both newer models and just so much fun. I mean, like fractions of the cost of a Flipper Zero, so much fun to work with, so many different firmware options. That's my other GitHub. If you look at my GitHub repository, I have code that pulls down all the different firmware and supporting files to your SD card for both of these devices. And the newer ones are just awesome. They're just packing more functionality in radios and GPIO ports on them, which is awesome. So you can extend it.
Honestly, I think I'm gonna have to grab one of those.
Yeah, definitely get the
card
newer
computers. Yeah, they're really nice.
Get the newer models. of everything, because you get all the latest features, better battery, the more radios, the whole thing. I was like, I'm so delighted to see that they're continuing like the development of these devices. It's just awesome.
I mean, if you want something smaller though, like that you actually carry in your pocket, not a Flipper Zero, and you're into like RFID stuff. Like, I don't know if you've seen.
Well, they have the M5
have you seen
stack
the chameleons?
Yes, I have one. I don't have the super tiny one though. Oh, but what is that one?
That's the Chameleon Ultra. So that one is the Ultra one, and it's very, very pretty. It's got like clear plastic on it. It's all gold. It does all of the stuff that you can do for HID, low frequency, high frequency, clone card.
I was going to say it does low frequency and high frequency, because what I discovered about the T-Embed CC1101 Plus is it's only high frequency.
It's only high frequency. Yeah.
It's only high frequency. Whereas the Flipper and the Chameleon are both. Yeah.
That stays in my pocket pretty much exclusively. It connects to your phone, so there's no display. There's nothing. It's super small. Gives you a little bit of range. I obviously have a Flipper in the backpack and the EDC, but like in the pocket, definitely have one of those. And I got two. Usually have two RFID like sensor kits. You put it up so you know if it's low or high frequency, and you get an idea of what you're working with if you're not familiar with the reader. But those
nice. I use my Flipper for that. I use my Flipper on the reader and it tells me what kind of reader it is.
Yep. Yeah, they make this little plastic thing to hook on the keychain.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's nice. But I'm gonna have to get one of those. Those are obviously on my Christmas list.
It's a rabbit hole too, because there's all kinds of different firmware for it. It's a rabbit hole.
That sounds great.
We talked a little bit about the Android TV streaming boxes, but that may have been before we started recording. So I wanted to come back to this story because I think we missed it from last week. And this is still, again, very much a supply chain attack. We've talked about Bad Box before in these cheap Android TV devices. The Krebs article also talks about another device that you buy that lets you stream TV for free, the Super Box. But they talk about the Super Box like for a while, but then like towards the bottom, they start talking about Bad Box, and they're attributing Bad Box to it says it was used as a distribution platform for IP Idea, a Chinese-based entity that is now the world's largest residential proxy network. I'm like, hold on, let me unpack that. You mean China is selling devices into the US that come bundled with malware, backdoors, or other apps that they're then selling like a VPN service, like a NordVPN, but except it's a Chinese-based VPN that the back end are these proxy devices on cheap electronics in the U.S. market. And so one of the things that they're
for military or government contract workers that do security research.
No, they said they're being used to commit fraud, crime, and get this, used by AI agents to scrape websites because it's harder to block residential IP addresses than anything else.
Yes. Okay. So, Paul, I just talked on my podcast. For anyone who doesn't know, I have a podcast called Open Source Security Podcast. This episode has not come out yet. But the person who created Anubis, when you go to like a website and it brings up the little, it's a jackal cartoon. I thought it was a cat. I was corrected. But Z is the author of that. And I talked to Z, and Z was saying that, yes, a ton of the bots that like the AI and lots of other places are using these hacked devices in people's homes.
Yep.
And what happens then is a lot of service providers know what residential IPs are. And even though they know like they're getting hammered from this IP range, they also know it's a residential block and they don't want to stop it because obviously they have customers and things like that coming from there. So like this is a huge problem, apparently.
Huge problem. Because these are cheap.
Wild.
We talked to them, right? They're cheap. They're sold on Amazon. Amazon does nothing to stop it because Amazon's making money. They're selling so many of these that everyone's making money that no one cares that they're being used for cybercrime.
Paul.
Google cares because they filed a lawsuit. FBI cares. I mean, they looked into it, but you're not going to stop it because people are still going to buy these devices off of Amazon. It's funny, the models they reference in here, I've actually tested and found malware on them. Yeah, the X88 Pro 10, I have one of those, and the T95, I have one of those too. And I found malware I think on both of them. Definitely
so
one
you've been
of them.
in a botnet, Paul. Well done.
I've been in a botnet. Well, I don't know that I let it out to the internet.
Come on. Hasn't everybody been in a botnet?
No, I didn't let it out to the internet. I blocked it, I think, at the internet and was just looking. Before I had my fancy script that we presented at the top of the show, I was just blocking it and just like looking at the traffic and making sure it wasn't doing anything nefarious. I don't think it didn't try and connect to my network, but it was trying to reach out to the internet. And I'm assuming once it was able to reach out to the internet, it would have started sending more stuff out, like my Wi-Fi SSID and password was one of the things it was sending out, and things like that.
Well, this is why we're blocking Chinese equipment here, right? To stop this kind of thing.
Right. I mean, they're pre-owned. Malware is included. It's just crazy. I'm glad to see it getting the attention on Krebs, but like, well, what's the answer? I don't know what the answer is. We've never. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, if the government bans equipment from China, then eventually this stuff will reach end of life, and that'll stop it if you can filter it coming in. I mean, what we really need is what I've been hearing about for 20 years. We need cyber UL listing. We need somehow to label products that meet some standard of security.
Here's the problem with thinking that it'll end of life. How old is the crappy Wi-Fi access point in Larry's house, the set-top box in Paul's house?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I know. I mean, once it's out there, you can't do anything but wait till the end of life. You're not going to send, like, ICE agents in to grab your router.
Let's hope please.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that. I mean, we could also brick them remotely. Like, if it's vulnerable and it's part of a botnet and it's end of life and you're not going to get updates, I think Japan kind of toyed with this idea, right? They were at least scanning for them. It was like, take them off the network, right? Just brick them. We've had stuff like that happen in the past. Brickerbot, and we've had people trying to do good, right? But then, ultimately it's still a CFA violation. When you do
Amazon did reach out and suck books back off your Kindle.
Yep.
So that's the same kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's not the smartest thing to do to do that outside of a contractual relationship, my friends. So,
right. But it's economics, though. Tyler had to run, but we were talking about the NVIDIA Shield, and I'm like, I love the NVIDIA Shield. It's an Android-based device. It's supported by NVIDIA. I trust NVIDIA more than I trust China, right? But my older NVIDIA devices, I don't know if I have an original NVIDIA Shield or if they're second generation, but I don't have an NVIDIA Shield in my device that hasn't gotten updates. Like, they all still get updates, and I've had them for many years, and still to this day, they get updates. And you can read the release notes, and they're addressing security vulnerabilities on them, and they're keeping them updated. And I'm like, that's impressive. That's the way to do it. But not every company is NVIDIA, and not every consumer is going to shell out I don't remember what I paid for them, well over $100 for these devices. But I was playing the long game. I don't have to replace these devices because they're not end of life. And guess what? They were really fast to begin with. So I don't have any lag when I fire up all my streaming apps on my NVIDIA Shield devices. It's crazy.
Okay, so I'm not going to bring this up again, but the CRA has a 10-year update guarantee built into it. So theoretically, anyone selling devices into the EU starting in 2027, I think it kicks in. They have to provide updates for the devices for 10 years. So this what garbage kind of on updates, Amazon,
though? How can they
security updates?
So if there's a known security vulnerability, they have to patch it. Right? That's the fear, is that they're going to stick their head in the sand. They're going to stick their head in the sand because if they don't know about a vulnerability, they don't have to fix it. Right? That's part of my concern.
Right. Well, so on that note, Paul, they're supposed to provide an SBOM to regulators depending upon the class. I mean, the CRA is like this insane web of complicated regulation. It may be too complicated to actually implement, but I like the idea. Like 10 years guaranteed updates, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Because it's economics, right? People buy these cheap devices because they're cheap and they work. But the reason that they're cheap is there's malware on them that someone else is making money off of.
Right.
That's subsidized
by malware.
I mean, all of our smart TVs are the same thing. Most are not subsidized with malware. I'm sure some are, But like adware is very similar in bundling these apps that you can't remove. That whoever owns that app is paying Samsung to go, you're going to put my app on every single TV that you sell, and you're not going to allow the user to remove it, which is crazy. Crazy to think about.
If you wanted to get away with this, you wouldn't put just one backdoor. You'd have a series of backdoors that stay asleep for a few years and wake up later so they don't find them to update them.
Right. That too.
Stop giving people ideas, Sam.
I know, huh?
The Chinese did that in 2010 to Google. That's an old idea.
Are you guys into barbecue? You guys smoke meat at home? Josh Marpet, I know you do, right? You're on mute, Josh.
I haven't put anything on the smoker in like friggin' weeks. It's been jonesing for it,
I know.
Well, so the last thing I did was a pork butt, made pulled pork from it. And
nice.
I tried a new technique, actually. So I made, normally I wrap it in peach paper. This time I put it in a tinfoil boat. So, sitting in tinfoil, and I put apple cider vinegar and a little honey in there. And it was actually amazing.
Oh, it's the way to do it, man. Yeah. When it reaches a certain temp, you should wrap it, or even just put it in a foil pan, cover it, put some apple juice or cider, whatever.
Yeah, that was it. Apple juice and apple cider vineger and some honey.
Yeah.
And it was insane.
And it kind of steams it, and it helps break it up. Yeah. It's good.
Breaks down the connective tissue. It was basically, I didn't cut it. I just sort of squished it.
Yeah, because the bone should pull right out. That's how you know it's done. If you can pull the bone out, it's done.
And it's clean.
That's your barbecue tip of the day from Paul Security Weekly. But there's I think it was Bishop Fox looked at hacking this meat barbecue probe. No, it wasn't Bishop Fox. It was some other company. But basically they say that the devices contain insecure Bluetooth low energy functionality. And it walks through the abuse of the commands, unauthenticated over-the-air updates, and they used it to create a theoretical Bluetooth low-energy barbecue botnet firmware. So this firmware would basically self-propagate because the updates happen over Bluetooth low energy, and they were able to get around any protections. You could infect everyone's barbecue. I thought the concept of like a warmable Bluetooth low energy firmware is awesome. I love the idea. I mean, it's not very practical hacking, offensively, but the concept of that botnet I thought was pretty cool. But this checks all the boxes for me, right? So, like, all these IoT products make a lot of these common mistakes. One is Bluetooth low energy. Like, when not implemented correctly, which is like most of the time, leads to vulnerabilities. They also use MQTT. And anytime you see MQTT, you will find that it's vulnerable to something. It's just always the case. They go hand in hand. And then I think I talked about this before, right? Over the air updates, what I'm observing so often in my own research and other people's research is the update protocol is not secure. The firmware is not signed, or software is not signed. There is no firmware encryption on the device. There's maybe no secure boot that's implemented. Those could be conceivably 4 different things. And all of this technology exists, right? Even in small platforms like an ESP32, you can implement secure boot, which implements your firmware signature validation, and you can implement firmware encryption. And if you're deploying an ESP32 in a commercial product, you should do those things. However, most people don't do those things. And I see this now in so many different products that the manufacturers are just leaving out this step of securing the firmware and its updates. Now, my question for the esteemed panel, since we talked about SBOMs, how do I does this information get in an SBOM? Do I know maybe before I buy the product, or maybe when I look at the SBOM for the product, should it disclose what validation it's doing, whether secure boot's turned on? I think it should.
It should, but that's not an SBOM. That's a vulnerability list. That's what the Cyber UL listing would have been if we ever did it.
But it's still is it still a bill of materials? It's telling me what?
No, it's not materials.
Protections?
It's vulnerabilities. It's design flaws. And we ought to have like the OWASP top 10 certified not to have any of them or something like that.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing. If I build I think, who is it? Bruce Schneier wrote a thing about this like a million years ago. He called it like the security market for lemons, I think. If I build a secure device and I build an insecure device, most consumers have literally no way to tell the difference. And in fact, most consumers are just going to buy the cheaper one, which is almost certainly going to be insecure because like security costs money, right?
That's why you need security labels like they have in Germany.
Does Germany have security labels for technology?
Yes.
Do they really?
Yes.
That's very cool.
They've had it for years. And Mudge talked about it 15 years ago. Somehow it never happened in America. But you ought to be able to they said it was like Cyber UL listing. This product is safe for use, certified by somebody, which just means it doesn't have like the top 10 flaws. Like no hard-coded password, no unencrypted communications, that sort of thing.
And is this a voluntary program in Germany?
I think it's not, but I'm not sure.
That's my guess.
Right.
But it could be voluntary because then customers would go for the labeled product, the ones that care about security.
That you would think, but back to Bruce Schneier's point is they're just going to buy whatever's cheaper.
A lot of people are concerned about security now. A lot of normal people would love to have more security. They're worried about everybody getting hacked. If you could put a label on the box that said it's more secure and they actually had some meaning, they would probably pay a few bucks more for it.
But I'd argue they don't want security. They want privacy.
Sure, but they regard those as the same thing. Sure.
I mean, maybe in that context, it is the same thing. But to us, right, those mean very different things. But there is a relationship between security and privacy, obviously. But I think the consumer, when they think about safety, what comes into their mind first is privacy. Like, oh, I don't want to buy the device that might spy on me. That's creepy. Yeah. I want to buy the device that has a less chance of spying on me.
Yeah, they don't want it leaking out their social security numbers and passwords. They can understand that.
Right. Or they don't want it listening to what they say. And a lot of people I talk to, even non-tech people, like, I don't want that in my house because I like my privacy. I'm like, maybe we need to jump on this bandwagon, right, to influence how consumers spend. Maybe.
You know, the problem is that trying to figure out what consumers are going to spend on. I've been an entrepreneur for a while, and B2C is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Okay, let me be honest. And when, and Sam, don't get me wrong, I love you dearly. But when you're like, oh, there's a lot of people that care about security. Bullshit.
It depends on how you market it.
I want to go back to the S-bomb idea for one moment. I want to ask you folks this question. This is something that I want, and I don't know if it's a good idea, bad idea, or if it ever has legs. Is that I want when I buy a device, I want a list. I want information about the root of trust, and I want a list of software that it trusts. Because today we don't get that, right? We get a device, it might have a root of trust, like for Secure Boot, but I don't know every piece of software that has been signed by that manufacturer with their private key that is trusted on that device. But I want that list, right? Because if there's a vulnerability in a piece of software that participates in that root of trust, that's a bad day. But we don't have that list of software. So how do we validate the root of trust if we can't validate the software, right? Like independent evaluation of that software. Do you believe something conceivable that we may see as part of like a bill of materials is providing information about the root of trust?
Yes, it's called a cryptography bomb.
Thank you.
The Cyclone DX guys have been they've got a bunch of different bombs for basically conveying information about like how things are built, what things are signed with, what kind of cryptography is in use with it. So like S-bomb is just one piece of this gigantic puzzle that they're trying to build.
Here's the problem.
Interesting, though, not just about the implementation, but a list of software that has been signed with the keys. I don't know. Yeah. Like, for example, Microsoft won't disclose every single driver that it signed. Like, shouldn't there be an attestation list from Microsoft? Here's a list of all the drivers. Here's a list of all the drivers we've certified to work with Windows.
But the problem is you've got drivers. Got it. But in terms of software, I don't want you to know the SBOM for every piece of software that I build. I may want you to know that I have this list, but I may not want you to know what's on those lists. Okay. And in terms of the SBOM, and this goes back to what Sam said about people are more interested in security. We have, and this goes back to what Josh Bressers said about it's mandatory in Europe and we ain't got shit over here. Yeah. Okay. We run a significant problem of too much information, or not, in some cases, not enough information, and no way to mandate the usage of the information. We don't have a financial incentive. We don't have a security incentive. We barely have a security incentive. Tell me, give me any group of security people that know enough about bombs of any sort that can actually make good use of them, and tell me that everybody in that in-group, whether it's database admins or firewall, whatever, can actually handle that and approves of that. Josh may be the closest to being able to give us a group like Anchor users, or whatever. But it's a problem, man. We don't have the proper incentivization. We literally have perverse incentivization in that if you know what you have, you're literally more liable for it.
Right.
So, I mean, I can kind of answer a little bit of that, Josh. So obviously from a day job perspective, I've been at Anchor like 5 years now. And back when I started, we had like our target audience was like all companies, right? Everyone needs SBOMs, everyone needs vulnerability scanning and all that. And over the course of that 5 years, it has become incredibly obvious that the only organizations that care about this stuff, you've got like federal government, you've got various highly regulated agencies in federal, as well as contractors working directly with them. They care about this stuff. You have regulated like Fortune 1000 companies that care about this stuff. And that's the list. Like we're out of people after that, because we found like you talk to these smaller companies like, oh yeah, I totally care about security. Like, well, you got to write us a check. They're like, we're doing all right. And I think that's what happens in a lot of instances is unless someone is saying you absolutely have to do this, you have to keep track of this, there's just not enough incentive for people to, write a check to do the work.
Bingo.
Which, I mean, it kind of sucks, but I get it, right?
We're on the same page, dude. Trust me. Unless you make it mandatory or unless you give somebody an incentive to do it, they're not going to do it. And that's what you're saying. Yes. Okay.
Exactly. So 100%. Yes.
So what do? Do we make it? And I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's not really because it's important. Do we make it mandatory by regulation, which Executive Order 14028 mandated that everybody who has a contract with a federal agency has to provide an SBOM? Cool. It's mandatory
EOs have
now.
No teeth, though. EOs have no teeth. Everyone knows
agreed,
that.
But it's still mandatory. Okay. Then you got that semi-codified into CMMC where SBOMs are not required, but they're highly recommended. Okay. And they're starting to come out with more about that in the next version. It's interesting. Anyway, but or do we say, hey, look, if you do this, you'll be more likely, like provide a financial incentive to do it? Because honestly, and this is my this is my position, is that we're letting everybody run as a vendor, but we're making them run as if they were the only company that security mattered to. We make every company have their own SOC, every company have their own MSSP, every company have their own EDR, every company have their own everything. The only thing we've done to make it better for companies is to have MSSPs, which are basically a way to leverage pieces of security professionals, a piece of a SOC. I rent a SOC rather than having to buy one, right? And having to staff one. Other than that, we have made it really crappy for companies to be out there selling crap, okay? Because we mandate, hey, are you SOC 2 compliant? Because if you're not SOC 2, I'm not working with you. Are you ISO 27001? And it's going to be, are you ISO 42001, which is, of course, the AI ISO standard, and NIST AI risk management framework. And I'm literally dealing with people that are trying to map that back to various frameworks, and it's not working well. Okay. So it's fascinating, the stuff that's going on. And in the near future, it's going to be mandatory. Trust me, it's going to be mandatory. How do we do it so that it works for us, not against us? It doesn't cost us more without getting something back. That's the question we have to answer. Not now. I'm not saying now, but Josh, you and I should talk.
Yes.
If I tell you that I own valuechainrisk.com, does that tell you a little about what I'm working on?
That's pretty cool. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like, so here's my question though, right? You're saying SOC 2 is mandatory, ISO 27001 is mandatory.
In procurement systems, it is now for most companies.
It is. And has it changed anything drastically, do you think?
No, because do you know why? Because SOC 2 tells you that you're certified to that third-party organization according to the trust principles given by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Do you think I live in this crap too much? And you've been certified by an accountant. Now, nothing against them. Some of the accounting firms have gotten really good technical teams to do this SOC 2 assessments. But, there's a dozen ways to skin a cat, and that's a horrible expression, but we'll go with it anyway. And the point is that you can walk your way around a lot of the things that the assessors are going to ask, unless you've got really good assessors. And besides, let me be honest, the minute you get through the SOC 2 assessment, what happens 3 minutes later? It's the same thing that happens 5 minutes after a pen test. Somebody commits code, screw it, pen test is worthless. You get through the SOC 2 assessment, 5 minutes later, somebody changes a policy or does something against policy because now I don't care anymore. Not for another year until they come back.
Yeah, I got 10 months. It's fine.
Exactly. So it's along the lines of we're not doing it dynamically. We do not have dynamic risk pricing. We do not have continuous compliance, continuous security. We do not have open visibility. Value chain visibility is the kicker. That's what we need to work on. By the way, that's what I am working on. It's my side project. I'm so weird.
It sounds like the solution is for Elon Musk to come in with Doge and the chainsaw and deregulate everything, nuke all of this
so hard,
and then let the free market solve all these problems.
I'm going to hit you so friggin' hard. Oh. No, I have a way to potentially make it incentivized properly. I am working on building this out, and I'll present it once I get funded.
Josh, you mentioned AI. You want to go to some AI?
Yeah, dude, let's talk
stories.
AI. Sorry, I've been teaching all week. I have a regulatory agency, a federal regulatory agency. I'm teaching how to audit this stuff. So it's like
you're deeply engrossed in it right now.
I am tired. Yes, I'm deeply engrossed in it. We had the AI discussion for an hour today. And it wasn't even on the curriculum. They just started asking questions. I'm like, all right, let's get to it.
Well,
Sam, your
there's
story
some AI
number one
stories that actually make sense today. Like my number one is the most important, most sensible one. Gartner said, don't use an AI browser. Don't
Bingo.
waste your time. They can't be secured. You're out of your mind, which is the right thing to say. I appreciate that.
That's the smartest thing I've seen Gartner say in a long time.
Yeah.
But just is this the one where they said users were using it to complete the training?
That's one of the many risks. Users could use the agentic browser to do their mandatory security training, which would be pretty awesome, actually, from a viewpoint of the user. But on top of that, the main thing is, you can't use the thing as intended without exposing it to great risk.
Right.
As we've all seen. The only way to make it safe would be to put all kinds of barriers on its use to where it's not even worth having.
It's interesting, though. Would an AI pass or fail mandatory infosec training?
I think it would pass just fine. For like 2 years, they've been passing college exams and medical certification exams and all that jazz. I mean, cheating the exams is what LLMs are all for.
Wait. I wonder if AI would pass a voice phishing test.
Oh, no,
that would be the kicker.
That was actually one thing they brought up. They said the AI is probably very easy to trick it in for phishing to go to a malicious website if you're going to let it surf, which I think is quite true. It would be even worse than your end users probably at noticing that something looks funny about that URL.
Dude, look, there's the Comet AI browser, and there's I don't game anymore, but I do, like, when I have 10 minutes, like, between sessions in a class or whatever, I will throw a browser game on just to turn my brain off for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? And there's some I've noticed that you're only allowed to play them on the Comet AI browser now. And it's like, nope.
What?
Oh, yeah. So
like Flash in the old days.
Yeah, well, you can only play it on this browser. You want to play this game? Come on, just download the browser. It's not a big deal. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah. Well, now that we talked about the intelligent article, we should talk about the stupid article. AI is going to require a whole lot more power. So the presentation at the International Atomic Energy Agency said it takes years to get a new nuclear plant up. So what we're going to do is we're going to have AI document and run the nuclear plants so they can spin it right up. And then they'll have the power to run the AIs. This will solve all our problems.
Are you joking?
They have this. Haven't approved this yet, but this is the presentation.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I had other articles about this recently, said the thing you missed is a lot of this is like a checklist. You're supposed to go down the checklist and make sure that all this stuff has happened, but the AI just sees that as a test to pass. Oh, the answer is yes, I did this. Yes, I did that. Yes, I did that. I finished it in 1 day, in 5 minutes, whereas normally it would have taken 6 months for a mere human to do it because they'd actually be doing the work.
Sam, I see the problem. It's right in the title of your article. Atoms for algorithms, fine, cutesy name, but that's fine.
Yeah.
The Trump administration's top nuclear scientists. There we go. That's the problem.
Well, yes, I agree. But I think you don't think how efficient it'll be.
No. No. Let me be very clear. No.
But we don't know, because if you start asking the AI about nuclear physics, it hits the guardrails pretty hard. Ask me how I know this.
Sure.
Well,
Paul, that's just
where
run your own, Paul. It's fine.
No.
Haven't you seen the? Yeah. Well, haven't you seen the meme or the joke page where it's like an image, but it talks about creating your own small nuclear reactor for heating water.
Yeah.
And it actually walks you through, like, you get a plastic barrel and the graphite rods and some uranium, and you can use it to heat bath water. I think it was creating a hot tub, right? It was creating a hot tub using nuclear physics. And I read this joke thing. I'm like, that's pretty funny. But, like, the hacker, like, nerd scientist in me was like, well, like, how hot would the water be? I'm like, if I would put my hand in there, radiation aside, like, wouldn't it just melt my skin off because the water is so hot? Like, it's converting into steam, right? And now a nuclear reactor at a very, very, very high level works, right? And then I started asking the AI questions about that, and it was like, I think you're on a list now.
Well, this is why your article number 5
I'm like,
is
no,
awesome.
I'm not going to do it. It was just a joke. I'm like, I'm not creating a nuclear. I'm like, I just want to know how hot the water is. Like, that's all I want to know. And it goes into the whole how it works. I'm like, just tell me how hot the water is. Now I'm on a list.
This is why your article number 5 is so important. We can now clean the censorship out of the AI model, so it will no longer complain about nonsense like telling you about how to make a nuclear reactor, which is amazing technically. I've been thinking this was impossible, but they explain here how they can do it. They can detect the censorship, and they can adjust the model to reduce the censorship.
I didn't understand. Yeah. I got the concept of this.
Yeah.
But when it described it to me, it was like a nuclear scientist explaining nuclear physics to me in, like, their language. I had no idea. It was so the tool is called Heretic. Wasn't that a video game back in the day? I feel like Heretic was a video game.
That was from id.
Right?
It was
it was Doom.
Yeah,
the Doom
engine
clone, but with green instead of blue or whatever. Yeah, I was like,
So it says now Heretic is a tool that removes censorship from transformer-based language models without expensive post-training. It combines advanced implementation of directional ablation, also known as obliteration, with a TPE-based parameter optimizer powered by Optuna.
No, this makes sense. I think I.
I'm glad that makes sense to you, because most of that did not make sense to me.
Well, I think I understand it. The point is, you feed it some stuff that it is supposed to reject. There are known test cases of bad questions that it should reject, and then you feed it things it doesn't reject, and you compare the response of all the neurons to these, and you can figure out which neurons are doing the rejection, and you can move them in the direction that will reject less. So it's not perfect, but it does take, like, when it used to reject 3 out of 3, now it only rejects 1 out of 3 of the forbidden phrases.
I gotcha.
And this is super important because there's a huge need for teaching AIs to forget things. Like, if you lose a lawsuit and you no longer have access to the copyrighted New York Times articles, you have to forget them. And if your model does something horrible like tell teenagers to commit suicide, you want it to stop doing that one thing without wrecking all its other features. And that's what this does. This can change its behavior in one specific way without destroying its other learning
the
very
model.
much.
Right. That's what it was saying in the description. Is it can do it without like destroying the model. Right.
That saves a ton of money, because the only known way to do this is to make a new data set and retrain it from zero, which costs millions of dollars.
Right. And now that RAM is so expensive, it costs $2 million.
Probably, yeah. So I mean, this is very useful demonstration of actually controlling the behavior of a transformer model, which has been considered extremely difficult.
Have you actually downloaded this and messed with it?
No, I haven't. But I made a deep neural rejection AI to detect poisoned images and reject them, and it works by a similar process, I think, but not by the forgetting. Gotcha. But that's where that's how I understand how much I understand of this.
Deep neural rejection is mostly what I got in college when I asked girls out. But
yeah, but that's the idea. What that does is that makes a parameter that measures just something about the shape of an image, and it's able to take the ones that look funny and notice that they've been maliciously altered. So,
interesting. Hey, I apologize. Can we talk about story 3, Sam? Yours?
Yeah.
Let's see. You read my mind. I was just... We've been doing this, spending too much time together.
Oh, you mean the fact that
I was just going to say, Sam, I want to talk about story number 3. Because I love the title. Microsoft has a problem. No one wants to buy or use its shoddy AI products.
Yeah,
Microsoft's.
Copilot. Yeah. I mean, and the point is, Microsoft announced last week that they're cutting their sales goals for their AI products. And then this hit a podcast and it hit the press, and I think the stock market started sliding, stock price. So the next day they came out and made a careful statement. We didn't say we're lowering our sales goals. We said our marketing plan is being revised, something like that. They have some bullshit way of pretending they didn't say that.
Some serious hand waving.
They've invested an incredible amount of money in these AI tools, and nobody wants them. Everybody wants to not have Copilot in their browser, not have Copilot in their Windows. Microsoft was hoping you would pay $20 a month to have that. And that is totally not what's happening.
$30 a month for regular M365 Copilot, $40 a month for Copilot for Power BI.
Yeah, and they've invested billions in it, hundreds of billions. They need you to pay a lot more than that to ever make that money back.
But I thought, is it enterprise adoption pretty decent for Copilot though? I feel like because they're forcing it, people are adopting it and implementing because they have to, I guess, versus want to. Is that?
Microsoft has done this so many times, like with Vista. They ram it out there and say, everybody wants this. You're going to thank us for it. Now pay us for it. And people said, but we don't want it. They say, shut up. We're ordering you to buy it.
Dear Microsoft, you are not Apple. Sincerely, Paul.
Well, Apple has an old-fashioned business model. They want to make something good, so you're willing to pay money to have it. Microsoft doesn't work this way. They make something rotten and they ram it down your throat. Yeah,
pretty much.
So the thing is, Mike, look, Copilot, M365 Copilot, and I'm serious about this. M365 Copilot is the world's worst insider threat vector, period, in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
And they have been rolling it out without thought or prayer of doing it properly. When you roll out an AI platform that has access to all of this data, hang on one second. You should lock down all of your data access control lists. You should make sure your data classification is up to par, and they don't bother.
Well,
and they're going to tell me, oh, you're wrong. And I'm going to say, I have talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of your clients that you rolled it out without making sure that was in place.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. And I think that Gartner report is going to help reinforce this. And also remember, recall was so bad, they actually didn't roll it out. They wanted to do something 10 times worse. And
except they're supposed to roll it out with the next version.
It'll come out.
Yeah.
It hasn't come out yet.
They're going to make it come out. I guarantee it.
Well, I don't know. There's getting to be a lot of backlash. Anyway, this is why I think the whole economy is going to crash pretty soon, as everyone's saying, because everyone's bet so much on AI, assuming there's going to be some awesome product that we're going to pay more for than the iPhone because it's going to be so wonderful. And I don't see that happening. And that has to happen within the next year or two, or the stock market is overvalued by a factor of 2.
But I think enterprises who are Microsoft's customers, right? Most of the computers that are used by enterprises today are Microsoft Windows computers and Microsoft infrastructure.
Yeah.
I think that they, like it or not, they're going to implement Microsoft's AI technology. And I think they're going to do that because they're all in on Microsoft. Most businesses are all in on Microsoft. And they're like, I don't want our users going to all this other AI stuff. Let's just bring it all in-house. We're going to use Copilot. And if you got to use an LLM to ask it questions or do something to help your job, you're going to use the Copilot that we have. And I think Microsoft is likely going to be successful doing that. I think the backlash is going to come from the non-corporate users of Microsoft Windows who've already been very, very, very vocal about not liking anything Microsoft has done lately. They don't like Windows 11. They don't want ads in their start menu. They don't want a Microsoft account. They don't want OneDrive. They don't want any of the AI features. They just want to use Windows because they want to play games, right? I mean, I think one of the driving factors behind people having a Microsoft Windows PC at home is I want to use it to play games, right? And I like Windows because I use it at work, so I get a Windows PC, and that's what I use to browse the web. And even I don't want all these other features. Now, when you're at work and you're in the enterprise, sure, you're going to use OneDrive, right? And you're probably going to use Copilot because your enterprise configured it, and that's the AI that you're going to use.
Well, they're probably going to force you to by group policy like they usually do because it's the only thing they can really monitor and control. But
correct.
And it'll probably be okay within a few years because they'll add more security controls to it. Like my article number 2, Google Chrome is trying to add enough security to make Gemini agentic browsing safe. And they claim they're going to make it. I mean, what they're doing, of course, is having a second LLM watching the first one to detect attacks, which is also something Microsoft has tried. But the other thing they're doing,
they want to enable that in my browser. I saw some notice today in my browser because I updated my computer, all the packages, and I got a new version of Chrome, and it was like, oh, do you want to enable this AI feed? I'm like, no, go away. I need to read about that first.
It's user alignment critic, which is like Microsoft's Vista user account control, the extra feature that stops you from doing stuff. So it's going to stop your AI from doing bad things. But they claim they're going to have bounty payments of up to $20,000 for anyone who breaks into it. So Google invented all this stuff, and they did not bring it to market. They were forced to by OpenAI because Google's opinion has been it's not ready to go to market even yet because it's not safe enough. Google's been trying to add all the safety features, and now they're doing it. So they might win. And then they'll show Microsoft how to do it. Within a couple of years, they might have security layers that help mitigate the things we're afraid of.
Well, because Gemini leaked its way into Google's enterprise accounts too. If you get a G Suite account,
Gemini does it a lot better than Copilot does.
It slowly started creeping its way into your life. All of a sudden, you're joining Google Meets, and it's like, hey, Gemini can take notes for you. And I'm like, wow, that's convenient. Why don't you
Nano Banana is really easy to use, and so I use it for image. I've done presentations.
Nano Banana is supposed to be an awesome image generating model, right? I've been hearing that. I was like, what is this Nano Banana? I'm like, why did they call it Nano Banana? It's so weird.
Remember, Android was always named after chocolates and sweets.
Yeah.
So I guess they're naming this the AI image generator after fruits.
The fruits.
Well, now that you mention Nano Banana, I think it has the vulnerabilities. Maybe not. It's a development environment. All the AI development environments have lots of serious flaws because we've talked about prompt injection. What these guys did is combine prompt injection with the other usual vulnerabilities. Can you use a prompt injection to get an RCE, to get a SQL injection, to get a buffer overflow? And combining the two, they were able to find serious vulnerabilities in every intrusion, every integrated development environment with AI, which makes sense. Cursor, GitHub, Klein.
VS Code. VS Code through extensions, you can add any number of models to it.
Yes, I would imagine. Well, it's not in the list, but anyway, it's not surprising. I mean, all these products in their current form have serious security flaws.
Yeah, I hesitate to use the AI plugins into my IDE.
Yeah,
because I feel like I lose control. Right, that's why I use Claude Code. And I have it ask me permission before it does anything, right? And I can see it, I can monitor it. It's writing code out to other files, and then I might take it into my IDE, might make modifications, and then be like, hey, go check out my modifications. Okay, now let's continue. That tends to be my workflow. I get nervous, well, mostly because VS Code ecosystem is not secure at all. Like the plugin system is terrible.
Yep.
It's
Isn't
terrible.
there some kind of automatic upload to GitHub feature?
VS Code has, much like I used to use JetBrains. They have their own AI models as well, and I'm not sure how those security wise fare, but they all have like plugins into like your local Docker and GitHub. So you're in your IDE, you can commit code, you can spin up a complete set of Docker container, and you don't have to like leave your IDE basically.
Yeah. And, the Article 9, I think, has the point here, which we've known, is prompt injection is a fundamental feature of large language models. There is no internal way to discriminate between commands from the administrator and commands from a lower privileged user. And until they rework the entire system to somehow include that distinction, they're always going to have prompt injection vulnerabilities. So they're going to have to be protected the way Google wants to, by having some kind of layer of defense outside them, like a web application firewall that tries to filter the inputs because the model is never going to be smart enough to not be vulnerable to a bad input.
Right, but that's a failed model, though. I mean, that's the firewall WAF model, which is a flawed model to begin with.
It is. That's why we're all nervous, but that's all we've got. And so Google is trying to implement enough defenses and limitations and everything to make it safe enough. And I imagine it can be done. The question is, that's bothering me all along, is what is the actual end result of all this that is so great that we're all going to pay a lot of money for it? How are they ever going to make that money back that they burned in these giant data centers? They have to make something that's as valuable to everybody as the iPhone. So we'll all cheerfully pay like $30 a month for it forever.
My concern, going back to the integrations in the IDE too, though, is it going to delete all my code, right? Like I've seen it go wrong, right? Like seen, well, some of my friends are like, oh, I was running it and then I prompted it and it misinterpreted it and it killed every process on my Linux system that had the keyword bash in it.
Oh, yeah. And it does things like format a drive just to make some space to store stuff and say, oh, you didn't want me to just format the drive?
I'm sure it apologized after it did it. It's fine.
Yeah,
I'm sure it did.
That's the thing that people don't understand. It doesn't understand what you say. It doesn't understand what it's doing. It's just playing math on the words. So if you tell it, don't do this, it'll say, oh, what do you do when boss gives you instructions? You say, oh, boss, I'll do that. Then they say, you did this terrible thing. Well, the right answer for that is, I won't do it again. But it didn't actually understand what it did wrong and not to do it again. Yeah. It just gave you the expected answer.
Did you guys listen to the Untitled Linux show? On the Twit Network?
Not me.
It's a good one. Who's the guy from Floss Weekly? Jonathan Bennett? He hosts that show. And one of the guys on that show was talking about how he was using AI to do something like Vagrant with VMs, and it made a mistake and accidentally wiped out all of his VMs.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about stuff like that, which is why I don't trust AI at all.
No, and you shouldn't. I mean, this is what all the science fiction about AI has always been for 80 years, is it does something horrible because it actually lacks all human values and emotion and understanding of the difference between good and evil. It just has some machine-like interpretation of what you say and no concept of what the consequences are.
Got to make those paper clips.
Yeah.
Right. It's you have to be very specific. Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons why like folks that have been in technology for so long and have like a background in coding and programming get better mileage, because we're kind of used to talking to a computer. I mean, not that we really talk to it, but we know that like a computer is very dumb. It does what we say.
Yeah.
Right. And
to err is human. To really screw it up, you need a computer.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the programmer joke. Like, the programmer's wife goes, go to the store. Yeah, and pick up a jug of milk and pick up a dozen eggs. And if they have milk, or pick up eggs and pick up milk. And if they have eggs, get a dozen. And he comes back with a dozen eggs or a dozen jugs of milk, right? Yeah.
She goes, what the hell?
Dozen jugs of milk.
He went, They had eggs.
Right. But that's what it's like talking to a computer. It does exactly what you tell it to do. And AI has allowed us to talk to the computer to tell it what to do. So when I prompt it and tell it what to do, I know that it's interpreting it as a computer. Right. And so like knowing that, I think that gives folks that work with computers for a long time an advantage. And you have to prompt it very specifically.
Well, I think if you understand how LLMs work, you understand it's even worse than that. They don't know the difference between a verb and a noun or anything like that. They don't parse the sentence. They don't know that the words stand for things in reality. It's just like a Google keyword search. You just find pages on the internet that have those words in it and mix them together, including random variation just to please you. So it doesn't. But
it's also
it doesn't even give you the same answer twice.
But it's also kind of like a teenager, though. I don't know how many of you have teenagers, but when you tell a teenager to do something, they'll tell you they did it, even though they didn't. And I'm like, holy crap, that's an LLM. I'm like, Claude, I told you to implement that feature. And I'm like, you did all the work. It's in the UI. But I'm like, you didn't put anything in the back end to actually make it do what it did. It goes, oh, sorry. I'll go do that. I'm like, I told you to take the trash out, but you still didn't like go take the trash out. Like you went outside and came back in, but you didn't take the trash out. I'm like, it's just like I'm talking to my teenager.
I can literally see a stage play using teenagers as stand-ins for LLMs.
Yeah.
Can you code this for me? Whatever.
Watch that.
Sure. I'll get right
Take
on
the
that.
trash out. Yes, master. The robot actually takes the
here's a
trash
screenshot.
out.
Here's a screenshot of that feature working, but I didn't write any of the code for it.
Oh God. Yeah, let me build that picture for you. And you click download and it goes, oh, you can't download things. What the?
Yeah. Oh, isn't that annoying?
Can you build a CSV of the output of that command? Yes, I can. Great. Go ahead and do it. I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't do that, Hal.
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's, oh my God. Can you imagine teenagers as LLMs? Like
It'd be a great video.
The fantasy. Take the garbage out. Yes, sir. I will take the garbage out right now. And it takes it out. Reality. Take the garbage out. Whatever, Dad.
I mean, no, look, it's the same problem, right? Like the teenager and the LLM, their goal is to basically like reach the end of the conversation the fastest way possible.
As quickly as possible. Yes,
and
you're
a teenager
exactly right.
will tell you they did the thing to make you go away, knowing if you actually verify it, they're going to be in trouble. An LLM doesn't have incentive. It just wants to, it gets to that where it's supposed to end, right? Like that's the goal.
Yeah. Because I'm like, my first thought was an LLM should be great at creating unit tests. But in reality, it's horrible at creating unit tests because it just lies to itself. Yeah. It's like, that shit works great.
No. What did you tell it to do? Did you tell it to pass the test? Because it will pass the test, Paul.
Oh, 100%. It will pass the test every time because it didn't test for anything. So that means it's passed.
Return true. Pass. Done.
Yep. That's right.
It wants to be so helpful. I guess that's why it's unlike a teenager. Because sometimes it seems like it wants to be helpful. Teenagers never really want to be helpful.
Teenagers don't want to be helpful.
No.
Dad, can I have the car? Take the garbage out. Oh, God, come on. It's so hard.
I don't need the car.
Right? Yeah. It's like, it's not really worth it. I want to talk about my story number 18. It's it's a multi-part story. The first part is extremely technical and gets into stack buffer overflows that stem from integer underflows. Essentially, there's a block of code where the logic ends up evaluating a negative number, but if it's an unsigned integer, it doesn't get evaluated as a negative number. It gets evaluated as a really large positive number. And if it stuffs that into memory, there's your stack overflow. Hopefully I got that right. Hopefully there's people out there that write exploits and understand that better than I do. They'd appreciate that description because that's the 50,000 foot view. So that was this bug, CVE 2025-13654 is the stack overflow in the duck. And duck is a library for like looking at your mounted volumes, I believe, in Debian, right? The other interesting thing, because, unsigned integer underflows are interesting too. The other thing is the duck project has like 22 open source developers who work on the utility. The researcher reached out to CERT, US CERT, to report the vulnerability. US CERT then went to the open source project with the disclosure, they fixed it and got back. I think it's interesting. And so a VINCE was filed, right? Those are those vulnerability notes, right? That typically talk about a CVE. But I guess I'm confused. I guess I need to go back and read the documentation and the FAQ around US CERT VINCEs and when you should use them and when you should not use them. I'm assuming US CERT is applying those rules. So when I see them, it's passed all of the criteria for that. But I'm kind of a little, because like I'll see ones that are for this small little utility that is open source and included in Linux distributions. They'll use US CERT for that. But I see other ones that is a pretty significant vulnerability that impacts the supply chain of many different vendors, where US CERT is super useful in helping contact, all of those vendors. So Bressers, do you have insights into is my question, resonating with you about when is it events and when it isn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you're asking. And so I used to do this for Red Hat, basically, like coordination of vulnerabilities. I'd work with the certs, I'd work with vendors, I'd work with open source projects. And I'm kind of surprised CERT helped with this. I mean, in my experience, when we would go to CERT and be like, hey, we've got something, if it wasn't like a huge deal, they were like, nope, we don't care. Go away, nerd. Like, we're not helping you. And maybe they've changed. I don't know I haven't been in this game in like 7-8 years now. So it could be different. But I don't know, that this feels really minor. And I mean, to add to your bit about the stack buffer overflow, all modern Linux distributions have stack canaries now. So stack buffer overflows are essentially crashes. And this utility, if it crashes, like that's a no-op, essentially. Like it's not going to affect anybody. So this
also it could leak sensitive information from memory, conceivably.
And canaries do not stop all buffer overflows. You can overflow from one variable into another without reaching the return pointer, and that can have effects.
That is true. That's fair. And I don't know the details. It's possible this did something that leaked memory or whatever. But
right. But back to the CERT thing. So I'm rightfully confused then.
Maybe they're having a slow week, Paul. Like, I don't know.
Right. But this is a trend. So this is just the latest one. I've observed a trend in the past 2 years where, like, I follow the RSS feed for CERT, VU or VINCEs that are issued with like my preconceived notion. If they're issuing one, something I got to pay attention to, like something big's happening. Josh, to your point, right? I always thought it was a flaw that involved multiple vendors, like affected multiple vendors, and the disclosure was big enough where US CERT would help with the disclosure, so that I, as a researcher, I don't have to go try and contact 12 Fortune 1000 companies, right? That it affect, or all these different open source. Maybe this affects 25 open source Linux distributions, and now I got to go to each one of them. Like US CERT can help with that disclosure. That's to me the proper usage of going to CERT, have them issue events, is to help with that disclosure. Like Kaminsky's DNS bug, that is a poster child that have impacted so many people. You wouldn't be able to do that without US CERT. But I'm seeing these kind of one-off things where I'm like, you probably could have just gone to MITR and gotten a CVE, even if you're not a CNA. You could have gotten a CVE, you could have done the disclosure to the project and called it a day, right? I mean, you can still go pull a CVE as an independent researcher, right?
Yes, you can.
Right, yeah.
So
the MITR will issue that for you.
The thing just popped into my head, Paul, that you kind of shook some memories loose is CERT has a tool that it's called VINCE, and it lets them like manage vulnerabilities. And so it's possible someone just asked them for a vulnerability and they didn't coordinate it. They just used their system to issue a CVE to the researcher who asked them for it.
I wonder if it's a shortcut to issue a CVE, because I can create a VINCE. Anyone can create a VINCE account. No, right. I don't want to flood the system now.
Quick, everyone sign up.
Quick, everyone go sign up. But you can go create a VINCE account. And also sometimes those get made public. Sometimes they don't. Like sometimes I feel like they issue a CVE, but they won't issue a VINCE, right? That's a thing. Yes, because I've seen those. I've been logged in and seen those where they're like, yep, Like we did disclosure, we issued a CVE, but we're not going to issue a VINs for it.
And for what it's worth, getting a CVE for MITRE still sucks. Like it's hard to do. And it's annoying.
Yeah, right. So is apparently becoming a CNA.
It's easier than getting a CVE sometimes.
Interesting. I know people who have been waiting over a month for a response.
I believe a month. Yeah. It depends. Sometimes they're slow, sometimes they're fast. Just be a pest.
Yeah.
That'll work.
Okay. Gotcha. Noted. There are multiple people who I know applying for CNA. With completely valid reasons, right? It's great, but I think they should be expediting the CNA process. We're taking workload off your plate, right? At the end of the day, no, maybe not.
It's complicated. So the work MITRE is done when people are asking for CVEs. Like the quality of their IDs is actually pretty crap right now.
Mm-hmm.
And minting CNAs is not free because they have like this overly complicated process and all these rules you're going to have to understand and follow and like pinky swear. You're going to follow their rules.
And there's like training you have to go through, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, it's a whole to do. And then once you're through that, then maybe theoretically you create less work for them unless you've screwed things up and then you make more work.
Unless you act like a bad citizen, right? But the process also kind of sounds like it's trying to weed out the bad citizens. But we know that there's, I don't want to say bad citizens, but I don't know, extending the program for different purposes. Like I'm picking on the WordPress ecosystem, right? Because there's some CNAs that are flooding the system. Also, it's a contentious issue with the Linux kernel too, because they are issuing a lot of CVEs, but I feel like some of those are bugs, not necessarily vulnerabilities. I've heard some people saying that the Linux kernel team, for every bug, they're issuing a CVE, because anything that impacts the kernel could be a security issue, but it's not every bug, right?
The
but some
bar
of them
is
aren't.
low.
Okay.
The bar is very low. And I mean, Greg KH he's commented multiple times that he doesn't know how the Linux kernel is used. So he obviously lowered the bar purposely.
Sure.
I mean,
he's an upstanding citizen though. When I listen to him talk, I'm like, he makes sense. I don't get that he has any ill will whatsoever. No. Supporting the process. Yeah.
He's definitely not ill-willed. I think, and the reality is, no matter how many vulnerabilities the Linux kernel is releasing, there's enough dangerous stuff in that bag. It doesn't matter, right? Like there's going to be 3 things in every release that negate the other, 100 IDs that they've assigned. So it is a flood of stuff, which does make it frustrating, but I sort of get it too.
But also going back, like in the application process, the way that you file it is, hey, if I find vulnerabilities in someone else's software, I'm going to be a CNA. I'm going to issue a CVE for that. But also, if I find or someone else finds flaws in my software, let's say I'm a software company that's applying to be a CNA, I'm also going to use the CNA process to issue my own CVEs. And I think that's largely good, although sometimes, of course, the incentives are backwards. But as long as everyone's behaving like a good citizen, for the most part, I think the system works and ultimately takes workload off of MITRE and other organizations. No?
Sort of. So there's a site, I think it's cve.icu, a guy named Jerry Gamblin, who, if you've never talked to, you should totally bring on the show to talk to. Okay.
That name sounds really familiar.
He's got he made like the CNA scorecard or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically looking at like how are the CNAs doing? Because not every CNA is the same. Like part of the problem is like there aren't hard rules on what you have to include. So like some CNAs will include like information about vulnerable versions, where the fix exists, like where the patch is, maybe in a Git repository.
Some people provide fantastic enrichment data.
Yeah.
And some people provide super crappy enrichment data.
Yes.
And everywhere in between. And it's so inconsistent.
Yes.
And that's what's so frustrating. Like in the tool that I wrote, the like kludges I had to include in that to like overcome that. Not every CVE has a CPE. Not every resources and reference entry has an appropriate tag, because if you look at the NVD entry of a CVE, some of the enrichment data is I forget what they call it. It's like references, resources, and other information. I forget what that section's titled, but it's like vendor advisory, link to an exploit, and then those reference links have tags, and some of those tags are exploits, some of those tags are vendor advisory. But it's not consistent. If it was consistent, that would be awesome. That would be a queryable database where I can go, oh, I can get the vendor advisory for every CVE that's ever been issued.
Consistency, sensibility.
No consistency. My code has multiple logic blocks where it's like, if there is a CPE, use that. If there's not a CPE, look in the reference thing and try and derive at least who the vendor is. That issued that, right? Because even like the vendor and the product is not immediately apparent. But also the other conditional statement is if it was issued by a CNA, and then it's likely that CNA's product that they're issuing the CVE for. It could not be, but there's like different kind of matching there, right? Like I look in the description for keywords and then match it to the CNA. But like the kludges I have to put in because the data is so inconsistent
it's rough
and frustrating.
That's one of the problems I think with, and why maybe CNAs aren't showing up as fast as they should. We don't need more CVEs. We need better CVEs.
And we need better organized CVEs.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right. CISA, the CVEs that CISA is enriching, Kev is one thing, but the CISA Vol Enrichment project is phenomenal. And the CVEs that they're enriching, I think they're doing a great job. They're providing some great data points. I incorporated that data into my tool, and I was like,
they're
pretty friggin' awesome. Like, they're indicating if there's a proof of concept that's available, and there's like three things. It's like proof of concept available. Is it automatable, and like overall impact or something like that? There's some great metrics in that Vol Enrichment data.
Yeah, for sure.
But you have to correlate all of these databases together.
It's a pain in the butt.
Right? You got to pull the Kev data. You got to pull the enrichment data. I pull exploit data from multiple different sources. I've got the raw CVE data. I've got the NVD data. And my tool has translated all of these databases into SQLite databases so I can query them fast, and I have to aggregate it all. I feel like we shouldn't have to do that. I feel like we could have one source truth that does that, except everyone's got their own CVE tool. I'm not the only one on the CVE
No, exactly.
tool,
like there's a million people have done this job over and over and over again, and it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all done it
we
different.
have to keep doing it over and over and over again is the problem.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank everyone for being on the show. Josh and Josh are the last ones standing in this show. I know it's a busy time of year for everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul Security Weekly. We'll see you next time. Over and out.